Hi there, this is Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com here with absolutely the most miserable, awful, terrible, horrible recording of the Beethoven piano concertos yet released. Of course, I say yet because something more awful can always come along, but I really kind of doubt it. Here it is. It's Mr. Arthur Schoonderwoerd and the period instrument group Cristofori. Not only do you get all 5 Beethoven piano concertos, but you also get the piano arrangement of the violin concerto, so you can be tortured even more than you already are. Now, why is this set so grotesque? Well, it's really very simple. Mr. Schoonderwoerd has had a brainstorm. He has decided that in Beethoven's day, performances of the piano concertos sometimes must have taken place in teeny tiny rooms with teeny tiny instrumental ensembles and everybody crammed in together. It must have been just delightful. Practically the only thing he leaves out of these performances is the fact that people didn't use deodorant and toilet paper hadn't been invented yet. But the performances really stink, so you get an idea of it just from the sound. First of all, he's chosen a forte piano, which allegedly is a replica of something from around 1800. I think actually mid-century is more appropriate. It sounds like the kind of twangy upright that you hear in a saloon, sort of a Western, Western before the railways came through, and that kind of twangy barroom jangly twangy thing, you know what I mean? Well, that's what it sounds like. It has no legato. Its intonation is approximate, or maybe the ensemble's approximate, because at the end of the introduction in the first movement of the Emperor, there's definitely a microtonal variance between what the piano is doing and what the rest of the orchestra is doing. Oh, and speaking of the orchestra, Cristofori consists of 7 strings and the full complement of winds and brass and timpani. Now, the string section is allocated 2 violins, 2 violas, 2 cellos, and 1 bass. This means that the tune actually can only be played at any given time by a single violin on top. They can't even play divisi, whereas, of course, the violas and cellos usually can, because at least there's 2 of them on a line. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. The idea that this has anything to do with some sort of historical performance technique or historically informed something is just absurd. And the sound of it has to be heard to be believed. Now, because the string ensemble is so small, Mr. Schoonderwoerd has to play along with them most of the time. So you also hear this twangy, jangling thing going on underneath most of the orchestral tutti. And the slow movements, oh my God, the slow movements. I mean, can you imagine the slow movement of the 4th piano concerto? That dramatic dialogue between unison strings and the piano played by I mean, it reminds me of Also Sprach Zarathustra, played by the Temple University Kazoo Choir. I don't know how many people heard that disc, but it's similar in that sort of sense. It just makes a mockery of the music. And because he's using the same forces for every concerto, no matter what, they all sort of sound the same. I mean, you don't hear Beethoven's growth from the early works to the Majesty of the Emperor concerto, or the sort of the updated Mozartian poise of the 4th. It all sounds just bad. I mean, I think Donald Tovey, the great British musicologist, said it best when he said scholarship itself is not required to insist on the restoration of conditions that ought never to have existed. Well, here is a set of recordings that never should have existed. Here you go. It's Arthur Schoonderwoerd, Cristofori on the Alpha label. They should all be ashamed of themselves for having done this. It's just a joke, and a bad one at that. So keep on listening, people, but to other things. Thank you.